Support for WMFE comes from JustCallMo.com and attorney Mo DeWitt, proud presenter of WMFE's Engage program. Mo DeWitt is committed to offering legal guidance in personal injury cases, such as car accidents and slip and falls. Offices in Orlando. More at JustCallMo.com.
Welcome to Engage, leading conversations that matter. Engage explores Central Florida's issues and culture with new voices, new perspectives, and thought-provoking interviews. Engage is made possible with the support of members like you and inaugural sponsor, JustCallMo.com. Engage is hosted by Sharon Stone.
You're listening to Engage on 90.7 WMFE. I'm Sharon Stone. Coming up, an Orlando tree that predates the Revolutionary War is getting cloned. We'll see how the city is preparing for emergencies ahead of the upcoming hurricane season. And the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club visits Engage to talk about the nation's largest black biker club. First, though, bills are circulating in both chambers of the Florida State House that would ban the use of community IDs in municipalities and counties in the state. The House approved a bill yesterday. The state Senate is scheduled to debate this bill today. Community identification doesn't carry the caveats of a state-issued driver's license or a state ID. It does allow the holder to open a bank account or utility account. It allows family to visit in hospitals and students to enroll in public schools. Advocates of community ID say they alleviate stresses in immigrant communities and help families with mixed residency status. Opponents of community IDs say they only incentivize illegal immigration. Republican Representative Jeff Holcomb of Hernando County spoke before the House yesterday on why he supports banning community IDs.
In my opinion, there's three reasons why the community IDs and the politics of words are supported. Number one, they want to increase population in certain segments of this country so they can get electoral votes and more representatives in Washington. Number two, they want illegal immigrants to vote. It was just mentioned that they can't vote yet. California, Maryland, Vermont, and other states are already doing it, and it's coming down the road. California just announced that they're going to be allowing illegal immigrants the ability to buy a home legally. Nationwide, we've had this bill proposed here twice. They want a popular vote. You're going to win a popular vote election when you allow new people to vote. Colorado is in a massive budget crisis right now, and the people surrounding the city of Denver are revolting. Number three, I wish I had a better explanation, but they're seeking chaos. Yep, I said chaos.
Hope Community Center is an immigrant advocacy nonprofit headquartered in Apopka. Felipe Sousa Lazabaye is the executive director. He came to Florida from Brazil at age 14 and acquired his citizenship in 2022 after living here as an undocumented resident for 20 years. He joined us to talk about the value he sees in these community IDs. And he started by explaining how the convoluted immigration system makes everyday life difficult.
It's important to kind of understand the myriad of different immigration statuses a person can have. And it isn't necessarily something that happens once in your life. So meaning you get a visa and then nothing changes. Like you could come in and out of status because of the broken immigration system. So for these 700,000 U.S. citizens, what that means is that they live in constant fear of their family members being deported. It also means that they have to take responsibility for the lives of their family members, meaning they have to drive them to the doctor, to places because they're undocumented. Family members don't have a driver's license, as an example, and much more. So really what this is a disservice to the 700,000 plus people. And also it is a place where a lot of children live in fear of losing their parents. So this is really what this is all about. There are about 1 million undocumented people living in Florida, over 700,000 U.S. citizens, and immigrants are about a quarter of the population here in Florida, too.
Can you help us understand these community IDs? What do they show proof of? What are they used for now?
Yes, a few counties across Florida decided to walk into the gap that the state has left for us to really trying to create a welcoming and inclusive community for all people. So community IDs is essentially an ID that is issued by a nonprofit. Certain counties also helped to pay for the cost up until last year when an anti-immigrant law actually took that away from the counties, the ability to do so. But then local organizations continue to raise money to continue the issuing of these IDs. So these IDs benefit transgender individuals that have issues getting driver's licenses, even children who are in the foster care system. There are a lot more people who, because of technicalities, are not allowed to get IDs in Florida. And the more and more the state tries to make it harder for people to get IDs, the worse it is for the most marginalized among us. And that includes undocumented people. And the reason why undocumented people need a community ID is because they're literally not allowed to get a driver's license in Florida.
So this bill wouldn't stop the nonprofits from issuing these community IDs, but it would make them less widely accepted. Can you talk about the real world impact of this change? Who takes them now and who wouldn't be able to after this bill?
Well, one of the biggest things that the community ID program did is that allow counties to accept through a resolution these IDs for municipal services like going to the library and etc. That also gave some legitimacy to the IDs. So banks and other institutions started taking it as a secondary ID. So even like, for example, getting a bank account, right? Like you have to show two IDs to get a bank account. So being able to use your community ID as a secondary ID, so meaning a person could use their passport from their country of origin and their community ID to open a bank account, it allows people to have access to the financial system, meaning they're not carrying hundreds of dollars in their pocket and being victims of crimes because of it.
What is your response to those who say this actually incentivizes illegal immigration, undocumented immigrants to be here?
Well, first of all, I would like to say that immigrants are not the problem. Immigrants are the solution to a lot of our economic issues, and immigrants continue to contribute profoundly to our community in so many different ways. I was an undocumented immigrant for 15 years of my life, and I know firsthand what it's like to get in a car because you don't have public transportation anywhere in Florida and have to drive with fearful of that being the end of my American dream, even though I grew up here. What I have to say to them is simply that what we need to do as a country, as a state, as a community is to create inclusive communities for all people. And immigration statuses doesn't take away people's rights to human rights and our constitutional rights to be seen and accepted as full people in this country. The broken immigration system needs to be fixed by the US Congress, and it is not up to the states to penalize immigrants because our Congress has not done enough to legalize and create a pathway to citizenship for 11 million people who are contributing every single day to our communities.
I don't really see a path of resistance for this bill moving forward as it goes through the House and Senate and to the governor's desk. How will that change what you do at Hope Community Center?
Honestly, what it does is that it makes us want to organize our communities and build resistance, and ask every single person who cares about immigrants, who knows an immigrant, to vote, and to remember every single person who voted for this bill and hold them accountable. That is our message right now. Our message is we are trying to change our state by using nonpartisan civic engagement strategies like voter registration, turning out voters, and most importantly, telling our stories because we're people too. And as people, we have dreams. And no matter what's happening on TV and what they say on TV, Florida has been a safe haven for asylum seekers for its entire journey as a state, from the time of the runaway slaves that ran away from Georgia and were protected by Native Americans here, to the time that Cubans arrived in the 60s. Nothing has changed. We know what to do as a community. And right now, what we need more than ever is for our state governor and legislature to focus on real issues happening to Florida, such as the insurance crisis, the lack of affordable housing, to name a few, instead of attacking immigrants and other marginalized communities.
Felipe Sousa Lazabaye is the executive director of Hope Community Center in Apopka. Ahead here on Engage, an effort is underway to preserve Orlando's oldest tree, or at least its DNA. And we meet the Orlando chapter of America's most prominent Black Motorcycle Club. Sharon Stone, you are listening to Engage on 90.7 WMFE. Just a reminder, we want to hear from you. You can send us an email to engage@wmfe.org. Ahead on the program, as bikers from across the nation descend on Daytona Beach for Bike Week, we meet the head of the Orlando chapter of the nation's largest Black motorcycle club.
We hear it all the time. What motorcycle gang are you in? And I said, well, we're not a gang, we're a motorcycle club.
Manny McDuffie stops by to talk about the Orlando Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club. First, though, voters in several states are heading to the polls on this Super Tuesday. Early voting is underway in parts of the state, including Orange and Polk counties, for Florida's presidential preference primary election on the 19th. Amanda Wilkerson is an assistant professor of higher education at UCF. She published a report analyzing the political engagement of Black students at Florida's HBCUs. Her research found the motivations for engaging in the exercise of civil rights has evolved drastically in recent years, and political leaders are not picking up on the trending. She joined Engage to share lessons from her study.
When we think about voters, what comes to mind? What image comes to mind? Then, when we think about Black voters, what image comes to mind? And certainly when we think about Black youth voters, what do we know about this population? So there was an interesting study done in 1969 where researchers looked at the political socialization of Black voters. Now, this came directly after African Americans got the right to vote in this country in 1964 and 65. Thereafter, what happened in terms of research on Black voters was they stopped thinking about their beliefs and their values and what motivated them intrinsically. And they went to doing tons and tons of research on just turnout. And this is why this topic is important. One, because when we think about voters, we certainly don't think about Black youth voters. And two, it's such an important population, particularly when we consider that Generation Z is on our heels. It's going to be one of the largest voting populations, eligible voters, since the baby boomers. And yet we know very little about their beliefs and their values. We only see sometimes their outcomes and their actions with limited explanations or data analytics that help us understand why they are taking a particular activity.
Okay, and Gen Z would be our youngest voters, so in theory, they'd be voting the longest into the future as well.
Exactly. This is right. And we know so little about them, which is so critically important because their sensibilities are very different from the average everyday voter. But particularly when we start talking about getting into race and education, they are very, very different.
In terms of what you learned about this group.
Exactly. They're very, very different.
I had a couple of findings that stood out to me, but I want to start with you. Did anything maybe surprise you from your findings?
The one thing that surprised me the most is messaging. There's an awful lot of money that's spent on messaging to voters to get them to turn out, right? You and I both know that we can sit and listen to the radio and hear a message about a particular candidate. We see it pop up on television, and now the sophistication with messaging has gone to social media. And yet, one of the findings that I found particularly interesting with this population is that You're sending a message to them, but it's not penetrating or impacting them in any sort of way. Think about it like this. It's almost like you know someone is hungry. You did not ask them what they want to eat. You order DoorDash and Uber Eats. You send it to the very place that they're at. They open the door and go, who sent me this food? I didn't want a cheeseburger. I didn't ask for it, but they're hungry. So they want the information, but the way it is delivered to them does not work for them.
That makes total sense. So if you're saying, tell me if I'm oversimplifying.
Sure.
Go vote is a stale message.
Very stale.
What's a more effective one?
One where you are able to hear their perspective about voting. Let me ask this question. When's the last time we said to voters of any kind, what's on your mind? Facebook does a good job on it. This is why we get people's, statements online and things of that nature. But we don't actually know what they're thinking about voting because we have been socialized for those who are organizing them to just tell them to vote, which is why my work became important because I was less enthusiastic about thinking about turnout. I was more enthusiastic about going back to understanding their positionalities, and we don't know them. And this gave me a rare opportunity to see it. They want you to have conversations with them that are generated authentically, and it's about them. And don't come when you need something. Come because you are willing to do something. A participant put it this way. We were sitting down in a focus group and I asked them, what is it that you want from elected officials? And she said very clearly, I don't want you to be relatable. Don't tell me that you have smoked weed. Don't tell me that you have hot sauce in your bag. Don't tell me that I should vote for you because I am Black. Instead, I want you to be reliable, that you know that I'm concerned about the cost of education right now, that I am concerned about what will happen with jobs, that I am concerned given AI. They talked about that a lot, right? Given AI, and that you can come to me and say, hey, here's what I plan to do for you. So it's still very performative, but you're going to them getting the information instead of assuming that they are going to vote just because you asked them to vote, but you're not offering them a real legitimate reason. And we are not having, at least I don't see those conversations occurring in this way. What generally happens, Sharon, is that elected officials will come out, they'll go to an auditorium, they'll sit in the middle of that auditorium, take maybe 45 minutes to share their story, their personal narrative, field a couple of questions from people who have been pre-selected in the audience to give that response. They shake a couple of hands, take pictures, post it on their social media, and either ask for money or ask for your vote. Instead, these conversations need to be much, much tighter and smaller. Don't take 45 minutes. Take 5 minutes. Don't go to an auditorium, especially if you're talking about youth educated voters, right? Instead, go to where they are at. Listen to them. Hard pause. They don't feel heard. They want their voices to be amplified, right? And then when you send out a message, use their trusted voices to generate what the message is for their peer organization. If I can give you the antithesis of what this looks like, I would say when people are talking about, let's just use Donald Trump because he's a lightning rod right now, right? Especially the voters who are in the demographic that I surveyed and interviewed between the ages of 18 and 29. So let's take rapper, fill in the blank. I don't want to name anybody, right? Okay. They say, I'm for Donald Trump. Now, first of all, the first inclination is for people to go, are they actually registered to vote? Why are they doing that? They critique and criticize instead of understanding that they have a voice and a positionality. And whether you agree with them or not, they're going to follow their own train of thought on it. But notice here, Donald Trump isn't saying, go vote for me because so-and-so is voting for me. Here, the reason why their voices are trusted is because their voices are being amplified. Now, will the campaign retweet it or put it out on X, put it out on other social media platforms? Yes, but they let the participant or my participant, they let them do the talking. And this convinces them their voices are being heard in a way that right now the popular method of reaching them isn't actually doing.
That brings me to another question about your findings. You found that, this group is online. They just grew up in a digital world.
Yes.
But students do not trust content shared on social media.
At all.
Please make that make sense for me.
The only way that I can make that make sense is through my just anecdotal experiences with them. So I had an opportunity to sit with these participants for more than one time. We surveyed them once. We talked to them several different times just to make sure that we were penetrating to what they really meant. And what they said is, we lie on social media. We use different filters to alter the way we look. I only show you what I want you to see about me. I don't trust a platform that I can manipulate to show you what I believe is true about me or what I want you to believe is true about me, to then for you to use it as a truth mechanism. And I thought to myself, wow, I understand their point very well. They're saying we use this to sometimes kind of not tell very good truths about ourselves, right? Or present ourselves in the best lighting. And now you're convincing me that I should use the same platform to believe your truth. I don't believe it. And they feel like it's not a vetted system, that anybody can put out what they want on social media. And what gets the attention is just the noise of the crowd, but not the truth of the information. And I thought that that was so interesting that, as you put it, these digital natives really don't trust political messaging on social media because they feel it can be manipulated in a number of different ways that makes them wonder, is this truthful?
Amanda Wilkerson is an assistant professor of higher education at UCF. If you miss part of Engage, you can listen on demand when it's convenient for you on our website, WMFE.org, or wherever you listen to podcasts. So a lot was happening in the world 400 years ago. In the early 1600s, Puritans had landed at Plymouth. The Dutch bought Manhattan for $24. Theatergoers were seeing Shakespeare's Henry VIII, The Tempest, for the first time. And a tiny oak sapling was sprouting in a Spanish colony in what is now Orlando. Floridians familiar with the Mills 50 district know Big Tree Park on Thornton Avenue by its sole resident, a 400-year-old sprawling oak tree. And while Big Tree Park isn't a crime scene, experts were on site earlier this year collecting DNA from a tree. David Millark explains why.
Because it's important for the reason that 98% of all our old-growth forests in the United States has been cut down.
Millark is a co-founder of Archangel Ancient Tree Archive. That's a Michigan-based nonprofit that collects DNA from old-growth trees to archive, clone, and replant. That's exactly what Millark is doing with Orlando's big tree. He joined Engage to explain why.
Now that it's getting hotter and drier everywhere, and our forests are being threatened by that heat and drought of climate change, old-growth trees can dial back and go through their DNA to the times when they survived drought and heat. It might be 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, but that's all right. It's in their DNA memory. So that memory is critically important to all trees that we plant, whether it's in urban areas or reforestation to forests that have lost, that they have that memory of the hottest, driest times to pull up to now to be able to survive.
So, David, what brought you to our tree in Orlando at Big Tree Park?
We've been working with old growth trees in Orlando as well as Florida for 30 years. We just haven't done much in the last 10 years, but most of the world and a lot of Floridians don't know that Florida has trees as large and as old as the redwoods and sequoias in California. But you do. Trees that are in excess of 2,000 years old, or in other words, trees that were just being born when Jesus walked the earth. It's pretty incredible.
Listening to you talk about the strength of this DNA that these old trees have, I'm wondering if there is a downside of taking it and cloning it in terms of when you plant it, do you lose the diversity? Is it therefore more vulnerable to disease or something that makes it not as strong as it was originally?
That's an excellent question. When we rebuild old growth forests, like we're doing in several areas around the world, we only utilize 10% of the clones and 90% of seedlings. So there is that built-in genetic diversity. But with 10% of the reforestation being of trees that are clones of old growth, the largest and oldest, that assures that old growth forest genetics will be reintroduced to the clonal forest, the old growth forest that we plant wherever that is. So yes, we do not advise over 10% of the clones be utilized and in conjunction with 90% of the seedlings. So that's a pretty vast genetic diversity, and some of those problems that you alluded to, we avoid that way.
What's the oldest tree that you've archived or cloned?
Methuselah, bristlecone pine in the White Mountains of California, and it's over 5,000 years old. And we discovered high in the Sierra Nevada mountains at about 9,000 feet, some giant sequoias, 35 foot across the trunk and 4,000 years old. The world didn't even know they were there. So those would be two of them.
So, wow, we're talking about something that started growing about the time pyramids are being built.
Before the pyramids were being built, and they're still living today. We were successful in cloning 60 of the largest and oldest coast redwoods, 2,000 to 3,000 years old. Several stumps we found of coast redwoods that were 33 feet across before they were cut down 150 years ago. And also like the lost grove of giant sequoias that are, they were 2,000 years old when Jesus walked the earth. Let's just put it that way.
Has the reception to your family's work changed in the decades you've been doing this as people change their minds about issues like climate change?
Absolutely. We're being overrun from around the world, countries. 160 countries last year asked us, could you please come and help us with our old growth trees and preserve the genetics? Climate change, there's islands that are going underwater. Florida's slated to have its days of reckoning coming with the ocean level rise. So as it gets hotter and drier and the storms get more severe, our phones are just ringing off the hook.
David Millark is with the Archangel Ancient Tree Archival. We also spoke with David Wagg, director of the City of Orlando's Parks Division. Wagg has been working with Archangel on this big tree project, and he explained to Engage why this tree was worthy of cloning.
Because it's got good DNA, basically, and it's been around a long time, and it's a champion style tree. We were contacted from Archangel Ancient Tree Archive through a mutual friend, and they were interested. They were interested in that tree because they knew about it through him, and so they reached out to us, and we were like, yeah, let's go. I mean, that's pretty cool. I know they have experience out west doing redwood trees and that kind of stuff, so they got a pretty good track record and of cloning trees and growing them up and getting them back in the ground. So we were excited to have an opportunity to be part of that project.
We already talked to David, just kind of how it works on his end. How about on Orlando's end? What's the ultimate goal here?
The ultimate goal for us is increasing our tree canopy. We're trying to get to 40% coverage by 2040, and live oaks, which this big tree is a big part of that for us. It's a large part of our diverse tree inventory. If we can get clones of the big tree out there, then they're more likely to make it based on their particular DNA to survive whatever comes up against it.
Could you help us understand the importance of tree canopy and why you want 40% coverage?
Obviously, trees are a wonderful thing. They take out CO2. They give us oxygen. They make cooler spaces. We've got 105,000 trees in our tree inventory at this point that the city maintains, and obviously we need more. But it makes life better. I mean, trees are great. Trees bring down blood pressure. Trees bring down anxiety and all kinds of stuff in studies that have been done. So increasing that canopy it just makes Orlando a better place to live.
Nice. And are there other trees, other than the one that we're talking about cloning, that could perhaps benefit from this process?
Absolutely. They actually cloned a cypress tree. There was a private tree in this area, which will help us because we'll be able to get some of those trees as well and get them on city property in the parks and around the lakes and that kind of stuff. So if we can get some of those trees in the future, we're excited to have an opportunity to get those in our spaces as well.
Yeah, and I can tell from talking to you that you're optimistic and excited about this. But why are you excited about this project?
Well, it's at parks. We take planting trees very seriously because we believe that it's great for the environment, and our staff is very dedicated and works every day on getting trees planted in the right place so they don't get in the way of developers and future urban growth. And it's fun, to go back and see trees that were planted 10, 20, 30 years ago and have the guy or gal who planted that tree. It brings a sense of joy and a sense of accomplishment to our staff to know that we did a good thing, 30 years ago, and now you're seeing the fruits of the labor.
David Wagg is the City of Orlando's Director of Parks Division. You can see the tree at Big Tree Park over on Thornton Avenue between Weber and Marks in the Mills 50 district. We went out there. Trust me, you cannot miss it if you take the trip. Want to make sure that you know we want to hear from you here on Engage. Call us, send us a talkback, or you can send us an email to engage@wmfe.org. Let us know what you want to talk more about. So Orlando is part of a pilot program to help underserved communities prepare for and recover from disaster. Designs are being created to build a portable resilience hub that can be used before or after severe weather like a hurricane, for example. Mike Hess is the Sustainability and Resilience Director for the City of Orlando. He joins us now live to explain how this is supposed to benefit vulnerable communities. Mike, thank you so much for joining Engage.
Yeah, thank you.
Let's start with broad. Can you paint a picture for us? What is this mobile hub going to look like, and what kind of services can you get from it?
So it's still being finalized in design, but our conceptual designs, it almost looks like an Airstream trailer. So cool looking 20-some foot long trailer that will be able to move to different communities, and the services that it will provide after a potential hurricane or some other disaster are still being finalized, but some of the core services will be backup power. So if your neighborhood doesn't have power, we could drop off the mobile resilience hub and you could use it to charge your phone. It'll have free public Wi-Fi associated with it, refrigerators, so if you need to store medicine, freezers so that we can deliver ice, and then also, things like canned goods, water, will also be part of those services.
So what was missing? Meaning, what gap in services did you see in the community that made you want to move forward with this project?
Yeah, so a big focus of the city, and this really comes from the mayor's philosophy is around community engagement and really going out and meeting our residents where they are. So we, in development of our Future Ready master plan, which was adopted in 2021, and then our resilience plan that we're working on right now, we've spent a lot of time out there talking with our residents, meeting with them at our community centers. I've been in a lot of great one-on-one conversations, and, just some of the things we heard from them is, not all of us can afford to have a backup generator, to be able to get by after a hurricane knocks out power, or, some people are struggling to put food on the shelf every single day. Mm-hmm. So we're putting out messages to stock up before a hurricane, but not everybody can afford to do that. Or if they do lose power after a hurricane, it can be a big detriment if they lose all the food in their refrigerator. So it was really just meeting with our residents and understanding what, some of their needs. And because of that, we've actually developed a much broader resilience hub approach where we are upgrading some of our large community centers. We are deploying some smaller fixed resilience hubs that we call our tables of connection. but not everyone lives, next to a community center or next to a park. So we want to also have this mobile resilience hub that we can deliver to, places that can't necessarily get to some of our fixed resilience hubs.
Well, speaking of those communities, since you have identified communities considered, I guess, in need of this equitable resilience, how do you communicate? How do you let these communities know that the hub is even available to them then?
So we're still working on that for the mobile hub. As I said, it is still in design. It's most of the way through design. But our partners at University of Central Florida, who are really the lead to go get this grant funding to build this mobile hub, they've been organizing workshops and they're going to be providing the city advice on how do we get the word out. They're going to be developing a website. And so we're really still like in design of what that process is to get the word out and how to deploy it and where to deploy it as it comes online, hopefully towards the end of this year.
Oh, that was going to be my next question, if you had a realistic timeline of when people could actually start using this mobile unit.
Yeah, I think the estimates on when it will be complete with construction are anywhere between sort of this fall or end of this year. So yeah, not too far out. And so hopefully by the end of 2024, it actually will be available.
Mike, we've talked a bit about how this can be used in emergency situations before and after. Do you see any type of use for this mobile hub when there isn't an emergency?
Yeah, I mean, actually, that is going to be the primary use. So okay. The hub is not only an asset that we can deploy after a storm to provide backup power or ice or water or internet. Most of the year, it's actually going to be used by our sustainability and resilience team here at the city as an educational tool. So it's a little bit inspired by the Tiny Green Home, which is at the Orlando Science Center, which is an educational display that is movable and teaches people about sustainability. So this trailer will be able to teach people about resilience. And we have a lot of great programs out there that impact resilience. I just heard David Wag talking about some of the city's tree programs. We have a few different free tree programs, and trees help minimize extreme heat. They are, can really help with resilience. So we want to use this Reach Hub, this mobile resilience hub year round to teach people about some of those other resilience programs like our free trees. We have a lot of great initiatives around local healthy food. So yeah, we just want to use it to educate people year round and hopefully help them be more resilient.
Am I getting ahead of you and asking, do you see perhaps a use for more than one of these, or do we need to start with one and see how it goes?
Yeah, we're going to start with one and see how it goes. Okay. And I could see the city having more, but yeah, this is really what UCF is building is kind of the pilot version of it. And so yeah, we'll be able to have it online at the end of this year. Hopefully test it out not too long after and see if it's something that we should replicate.
Mike Hess is the Sustainability and Resilience Director for Orlando. Thank you so much for joining Engage.
Yeah, thank you.
Coming up, ride along with the Central Florida Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club. You're listening to Engage on 90.7. You're listening to Engage on 90.7 WMFE. I'm Sharon Stone. More than 100,000 people are expected to be in Daytona Beach for Bike Week. It runs through Sunday. Here in Orlando, the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club represents Central Florida's Black bikers. Formed in 1993, the local chapter is 50 strong with a national membership of more than 5,000 bikers in 140 chapters. Manny McDuffie has worn many hats in his life. He was a radio DJ, an Air Force veteran, a former Orange County Sheriff's deputy. Today, his hat is a helmet, and he's the president of the Orlando chapter of the Buffalo Soldiers. McDuffie stopped by with his bike to talk about the club and his own passion for riding. He began the conversation by describing his first experience on a motorcycle.
Never rode a motorcycle, anything in my life. The first time was riding a moped. And I rode a Honda 750 from North Miami to Homestead Air Force Base in the height of the traffic. So it was bumper-to-bumper traffic, and I was thinking all the way back to Homestead, why did I get this motorcycle? I said I was scared to death. I mean, cars were beeping. I mean, it was just horrible. I got to Homestead Air Force Base, and I felt a little bit better. I said, well, at least I survived that. So I kept the bike for a little bit, and until I did a temporary duty at Andrews Air Force Base. So I sold the bike, and I didn't ride a bike since then until probably 2008.
Really?
Yeah.
What changed in 2008?
Well, the unit I was in with the sheriff's office, most of the guys rode motorcycles. So they said, well, you're the only one in here that doesn't have a bike. And I said, well, my wife isn't going to let me get another bike. So I asked her about getting a bike, and she's a nurse, so she didn't want me to have a bike. So what I did is I took a picture of a motorcycle. I put it on the bathroom door. I put it on the refrigerator door. I put it on the shower doors. I put it all over the house. And she says, I'm tired of these pictures of motorcycle. If you want to buy a motorcycle, go ahead and buy one. She opened up that window, so I went and bought a motorcycle.
A few subtle hints.
Yeah. And again, here I am at the peak of rush hour traffic, driving my bike. She's behind me in the car with the flashers on, and I'm doing about 40 miles an hour, scared to death, because this motorcycle, it was a sport cruiser, so it was one of those get-up-and-go bikes. And when I got the bike home, I was scared to death. I said, I don't know why I did this. I said I should have never listened to them.
How did you go from being scared to president of the local chapter of the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club?
Well, that's an interesting question, because when I first started riding the bike, I remember I was out on 520, and I told my wife I was just going to ride in the neighborhoods, but I figured if I go to Titusville is much more laid back. It's not as much traffic as Orlando. But I got on the highway, the fastest I wanted to go was 50 miles an hour. So I said, no, I don't think this is for me. So I was sitting at the little Citgo station there on 520, and I saw a bunch of females. They were correction officers and so forth, and they were riding their bikes to Cocoa Beach. And I knew one of them. She said, hey, why don't you ride with us? And I said, yeah, I can ride with them. They got on those bikes, and they left the gas station like somebody stole something. By the time they got to the beach line, they were out of sight. So I just turned around, and I came on back home. About 2 weeks later, I saw her in the jail, and she actually said, what happened to you? I said, oh, I got a page, and I had to go back home. I had to go, use the phone. I didn't want them to know that they had ran me under the table. But riding with the Buffalo Soldiers, it helped me to be a better rider, because with the Buffalo Soldiers, we ride in a very organized formation, and we also trained quite a bit. And what I did also with the sheriff's office, I went to our police motorcycle school. So I learned to ride better there. And then later on, I became an MSF instructor. So I teach motorcycle riding, beginner road motorcycle riding for two-wheel and three-wheel bikes.
Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club, learning about it nationally, they have some initiatives like a scholarship. Can you talk about some of the things that the local Orlando chapter does?
Yes. Well, the national and local, we have three pillars. What we have, we ride, we educate, and we serve. So basically, we ride our motorcycles in homage of the original Buffalo Soldiers from 1866 to 1944. We educate the general public about the history of the Buffalo Soldiers and how our motorcycle club relates to them, and we serve our community. We do several different things. Our particular chapter, we give 3 $1,000 scholarships a year. We give 3 $500 continuing education scholarships to the students that previously got $500 last year. And We also do a shop with a Buffalo Soldier. We partner with Attorney Dan Newland and Walmart. Last year, we gave $100 to 125 kids, and we took them shopping for Christmas at Walmart. They got to buy whatever they wanted to buy. And at the Courtyards of Orlando nursing home, we bought gift baskets for every one of the senior citizens that's there. And we also, I don't know how good it is, but I guess they liked it. You know, we sang Christmas carols and did little skits and so forth.
I would argue that some people have a perception or an idea in their head, maybe from pop culture, of what a motorcycle club may be. What reaction do you get when people hear that you are in one?
Oh, yeah. That is a very good thing. I mean, we hear it all the time. What motorcycle gang are you in? And I said, well, we're not a gang. We're a motorcycle club. And it's several different types of club. You have what you call the 99 percenters. What I mean by that is 99% of the people believe that you're a law-abiding citizen. And then we have traditional motorcycle clubs that they believe in, and they're 1%ers, and they believe that 1% of the people are, do different things. And our club is a 99%er. We don't claim any territory. However, we take our members and our colors seriously. And most the motorcycle clubs, like your traditional motorcycle clubs, they really don't have members as full patch members, whereas the Buffalo Soldiers, females can be a chapter president or hold office, whereas in a traditional motorcycle club, they can't.
Is this also an opportunity to educate people about Buffalo Soldiers?
Yes. Well, the Buffalo Soldiers, they were started back in 1866. Congress enacted 2 cavalry units and 2 infantry units, the 9th and 10th Cavalry, and they were mainly sent out west to help with the settlers. And the Cheyenne Indians saw these different soldiers coming out there because most of the time they were used to the white soldiers. And all of a sudden they see these dark-skinned soldiers with their hair was kind of matted like the buffalo. And a lot of them saw that, these Buffalo Soldiers, they were different type soldiers. They fought fiercely, and they were just different. So they called them buffaloes because a buffalo is a very fierce fighting animal. It doesn't give up, and that's how they got the name. And it was a few notable Buffalo Soldiers. One was Cathay Williams. She basically was the first black female to ever enlist in the United States Army, but she kind of did it different. She enlisted as a man. She went in as William Cathay, and she posed as a male for about 2 years until she got sick, and they finally found out that, hey, this is not a male, this is a female. So they discharged her, and but she was actually the first black female to ever enlist in the United States Army.
Manny McDuffie is the president of the Orlando chapter of the Buffalo Soldiers Motorcycle Club. That's all for today's edition of Engage. We'll be back Thursday afternoon at 3 o'clock. You can learn more about today's program by visiting our website, wmfe.org. That's also where you can find Engage on demand, or you can listen anywhere that you get your podcasts. I'm Sharon Stone. Thank you for joining us. All Things Considered is coming up following NPR News.